Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into data strategy in the age of AI.
Yeah, a really fascinating topic.
We've got research reports and real-world case studies to look at, and our goal is to understand these big trends, see how data strategy is evolving,
Absolutely.
but also, what does it all mean for your job and career?
That's a big one for a lot of folks, I think.
It really is.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how we've moved past just big data to AI, completely changing the game.
Yeah.
How we collect it, how we manage it, and how we use it.
Yeah.
It's not just about analyzing data anymore.
No.
AI is actually driving strategy itself.
It really is. It's fascinating. It's not just, we're not just talking about big data anymore. It's like AI is the game changer, right?
Yeah.
It is changing how we collect the data, how we manage the data, and how we actually use the data.
Right, and our sources show most companies are struggling to keep up with this shift. One report we looked at said 78% are having trouble adapting their infrastructure for AI workloads. What's behind that, do you think?
I think it's a couple of things. One is talent, right?
Yeah.
There is a huge shortage of people who actually have the right skills to build these AI-powered data systems, manage them. But then there's also, I think, a very, very traditional way of looking at data for a lot of these companies.
Oh, interesting.
They still look at it as a cost center as opposed to a strategic asset, and this is what we've been talking about for a while.
Yeah. How do companies then bridge that gap? What advice did you see in the research that we looked at?
So upskilling, right?
Okay.
Training and investing in training programs that focus on AI and machine learning for your existing workforce is going to be crucial. And then, don't shy away from cloud-based platforms. They provide a lot of flexibility and scalability, which is needed for AI workloads without, requiring you to have a massive upfront investment.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, one source that I found really interesting was Momar Lone's framework for AI-driven data strategy. He calls them the 4 pillars, and this isn't just about technology, is it?
No. Lone really looks at the, the human side and the organizational side of things as well. So, his first pillar is what he calls AI governance integration. That's basically building, ethics and risk management into your AI systems from the ground up. So you're baking it right into the cake.
So responsible AI from the get-go.
From the get-go.
That sounds absolutely crucial.
Especially with all the things that are happening around, AI bias and the unintended consequences of some of these AI implementations.
Exactly.
Then he talks about cultural transformation, right? That's the second pillar because, it's people who are at the heart of this shift.
Right.
You have to create a data-driven culture. You have to invest in training your employees.
Right.
Getting them to be comfortable with AI.
That sounds like a massive undertaking.
It is.
Especially for larger organizations.
Absolutely. But one of the case studies that we saw was a bank who completely revamped its data strategy, and they did a very, very smart thing.
Okay.
They created these dedicated data teams. Oh, nice.
And they invested in training. They even appointed what they call data champions within different departments to actually drive adoption, and it created this ripple effect across the organization.
That's amazing. So leading by example and giving people the tools that they need at every level.
Exactly. And it is a huge investment in people, but I think that cultural transformation is key, right?
Absolutely.
The third pillar, Lone, talks about industry-specific roadmaps. Different industries have unique data challenges.
Of course.
One size fits all doesn't work here.
Yeah, the way, a retailer or an e-commerce company uses data is going to be very different from a healthcare company or from a manufacturing company.
Precisely.
They're all going to have different needs and different challenges.
Exactly. And then the fourth pillar is what he calls innovation governance balance.
Okay.
That's basically about balancing the need to innovate quickly
right.
with responsible data practices. Move fast, but don't break things, especially when it comes to privacy and security. Right. So finding that sweet spot between agility and having control over the data.
Yes.
It's a tough balance, I think, especially with the pressure to, innovate quickly these days.
Absolutely. Now let's go to the, the heart of it all, which is data itself. In the age of AI, it's not just something you manage. It's literally the fuel for innovation. It's your competitive edge.
So how do you measure the value of data then? In the past, it was about cost savings or process improvements. What about in this new AI-driven world?
You have to think bigger, right? Data can drive new product development. It can help you create personalized experiences. It can even help you come up with completely new business models. And Lone has this really interesting approach, which he calls the create, enhance, utilize, archive framework.
Break that down for me.
It's basically you start with ensuring you are creating quality data in the first place, right?
Hmm.
You validate the sources, you ensure quality data from the get-go, then you enhance it, you add context to it, you improve accuracy. Then, of course, you utilize the data, extract insights, drive value, and then the last part is archive it responsibly. Think about legal and ethical considerations when you're archiving this data.
So it's a whole life cycle of data then,
Yeah.
really. You're constantly taking that raw data and turning it into something valuable. You're not just letting it sit there gathering dust.
Exactly. Now, to understand where we are today, let's actually just take a step back and look at how data strategy has evolved over time.
Okay, time for a history lesson.
We started with the mainframe era, where data was centralized and it was siloed. Then came the client-server revolution, which distributed computing.
Made it a little more accessible.
Made it more accessible.
Mhm.
Then, of course, the internet came and exploded, and all this data, came from online platforms.
Yeah.
That was a game changer. That led to the big data era. We had to handle all these massive volumes of structured, unstructured data. We started talking about, NoSQL databases, Hadoop, those kinds of technologies.
Right, yeah.
And now we're in the midst of the AI revolution, where AI is shaping how we collect, manage, and use this data.
Right. It's about making data smarter. It's not just about having more data. It's about what you do with it.
Right. And this means that, we've also had to evolve in terms of how we actually build and use data systems.
Yeah. How has data architecture and processing changed? What did our research show?
So in the early days, it was all about batch processing. You collected data, you stored it, and then you processed it in big chunks, right? It was like reading a book. You get the whole story, but it takes a while.
Right, yeah.
Now with AI, we need those insights real time, right?
Right.
So it's like, watching a live stream, you need to react in real time to what's happening now.
Absolutely.
So real time and stream processing have become really crucial in this fast-paced world.
Yeah. And how has that impacted data architecture then?
So we've gone from those traditional data warehouses, which were great for structured data, to more flexible and scalable approaches like data lakes and data meshes.
Okay, I've heard those terms thrown around.
Yeah.
Can you break those down for me a little bit?
Imagine a data lake as a massive reservoir of raw data, right?
Yeah.
You can store all kinds of data there in its native format. A data mesh, on the other hand, is like a network of interconnected data hubs,
Okay.
each managed by a specific team, but all working together.
Interesting. So data lakes are about just kind of getting everything in there.
Yeah,
And data mesh is about organizing it all in a decentralized kind of way.
absolutely.
Okay.
And these new approaches are essential, especially when it comes to AI workloads, because they require access to very diverse data sources
Yeah.
and the ability to process data in real time.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground here, the evolution of data strategy to these new ways of building data systems.
Yeah.
But let's bring it back to our listener now. What does this all mean for your career?
Yeah.
How is your job going to be impacted by this?
So that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? The roles and responsibilities within data strategy are changing very, very rapidly. And a big part of this is that there's this growing need for skills that bridge the gap between technical expertise and understanding the business. You can't just be a techie anymore. You have to understand how this stuff actually applies to business outcomes.
Right, so I got a ton of questions from listeners about cross-training and upskilling. What are some specific areas that they should focus on to really stay ahead of the game?
I think data professionals need to become more well-rounded, right? It's no longer enough to just be a SQL expert or just to be a data modeler. You need a solid understanding of AI, machine learning. But you also need that business context.
So it's almost like those lines between data roles are blurring. Data analysts need some AI knowledge. Data scientists need to be able to talk business. And everyone needs to be a little bit more comfortable in this agile, collaborative world.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And we're also seeing new job roles emerging, things like AI ethicists, data governance specialists. There's a big emphasis now on responsible AI.
Now, one of the questions that came up a lot was, how do data operations evolve to become more AI-centric? What are those key steps that an organization needs to take?
I think it has to start at the top, right? Leadership has to buy into this vision of an AI-driven organization. They have to foster a culture where data and innovation are valued.
It's about culture again.
It is about culture.
Yeah.
And invest in the right technology and infrastructure to support AI. But most importantly, empower your data professionals. give them the tools, the skills, and the training that they need to actually work effectively with AI.
Yeah, so it's not just about the tech.
Yeah.
It's about the people and the culture and creating this environment where people are excited about data and AI and understand the power of it.
Absolutely. And, don't forget about data governance.
Oh, I
You need a very robust framework to ensure AI and data are being used ethically and responsibly,
Right, building trust is key.
Absolutely.
both
Yeah.
within the organization and with your customers. Now, this shift to AI-driven data strategy also brings up this question about power dynamics within organizations.
Yes.
One of the listeners wrote in and asked, will IT own data, or will that power shift to business units? What do you think?
That is the question, right? In the past, IT has always held the keys to the data kingdom, right?
Yeah,
They managed the infrastructure, they controlled access, they were the gatekeepers.
right.
But with AI, data is becoming a lot more democratized.
So is there a bit of a power struggle then? Who gets to call the shots in this new world?
Well, business units are now recognizing the value of data.
Right.
They want more direct access, and they want control.
Yeah,
They're building their own data teams, they're developing their own AI capabilities.
which is even easier now with these cloud-based platforms and AI tools.
Absolutely, they can bypass IT completely in a lot of these cases.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
It really is.
Playing out across every industry.
Yeah. The question is, how do you find that right balance between, having that centralized IT control and then giving business units the ownership they need to be agile?
I'm guessing there's no easy answer to that.
No, it depends on the industry, the size of the company, the culture of the company.
Yeah, a lot of factors at play.
Absolutely. But, what's clear is that the role of data and who controls it is going to be, one of the most critical strategic considerations for any business going forward. And, this brings us to another question that we want to talk about. What does all of this mean for the future of data strategy and job roles?
Let's dive into that in part 2. This is where things get really exciting. We'll explore some of the emerging trends that could completely change how we think about data strategy.
It is fascinating, isn't it, how these power dynamics are, going to play out.
It is, yeah.
But you're right. Let's shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's look into the future.
Let's do some future casting here.
Yeah, so our sources talk about some pretty exciting developments that could completely change the game when it comes to data strategy. We're talking about things like sustainable computing, federated learning, edge computing,
Wow.
even quantum technologies.
It's mind-blowing. Okay, I'm ready. Let's break some of those down a little bit. Sustainable computing. I'm really intrigued by that, especially with all the concerns about data centers, AI, and its impact on the environment.
Yeah, and it's becoming more and more critical, right? We're talking about designing energy-efficient algorithms, energy-efficient hardware. There's even this idea of, carbon-aware computing.
Wow.
Like, imagine data centers that could actually help combat climate change.
That's a pretty amazing thought. What about federated learning? That one sounds like it has some huge implications for data privacy.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So federated learning basically allows AI models to be trained on data that's distributed, right? Across multiple devices or servers. So you get the benefit of AI without having to pool all your data in one place, which is a big win for privacy.
It makes sense, yeah, with all the concerns about data breaches and regulations becoming more and more stringent.
Absolutely. Then there's edge computing, which is all about processing data closer to the source, whether it's a sensor, on a factory floor or on your smartphone.
Oh, interesting.
This reduces lag time. It improves real-time decision-making, which is really critical for things like, autonomous vehicles, smart cities, all these applications that are AI-powered.
So instead of sending all that data to the cloud, we're processing it right where it's being generated.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's fascinating. All right, what about quantum technologies? I'll admit, that one sounds a little sci-fi to me.
It does.
Yeah.
But quantum computing has the potential to completely revolutionize data analysis because it can tackle problems that traditional computers just can't, problems that are too complex for them to solve. And then there's quantum sensors, which offer this incredible precision, which opens up a whole lot of possibilities in fields like healthcare and manufacturing.
All right, I officially feel like we're in the future now.
Yeah.
But let's bring it back down to earth for a second and talk about, what all this means for folks' careers. How will all these emerging trends impact job roles, for data professionals, for people who work with data? What kind of cross-training, upskilling is going to be essential for everyone to stay ahead of the curve?
I think, the need for skilled data professionals is only going to increase. The demand is going to go up, but the nature of those skills is going to change, right?
Right.
So, for example, as sustainable computing becomes more and more important,
Right.
you're going to need people who understand how to design, energy-efficient algorithms and systems.
So it's not just about data skills anymore. It's about environmental awareness as well.
Absolutely. And with federated learning, you're going to need people who are experts in privacy-preserving AI, right? Making sure data is being used ethically and responsibly.
Right.
Edge computing is going to require people with expertise in distributed systems, in real-time analytics, in those very specific, edge-specific AI technologies, quantum technologies.
About that. Yeah.
I can only imagine. They are still early days, but, they're developing very rapidly. So, if you are a forward-thinking data professional, this is something that you should start looking into.
Yeah.
Start understanding, start exploring these fields. I think we will see new job roles coming up around quantum data analysis and application.
It sounds like the future of data strategy is going to require a lot of different things.
Yes.
Deep technical expertise, but also the ability to adapt and the willingness to always be learning. Right? Always upskilling.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the technical skills. As the AI gets more and more embedded in business, we're going to need data professionals who can explain these complex ideas to non-technical folks.
Right.
You have to be that bridge, between IT and business units.
Right.
You have to be an advocate for ethical AI.
So it's like you're a data translator, you're a storyteller, you're an ethicist. It's a lot.
It's a lot, but it's exciting.
It is exciting. Okay, I'm inspired. But I have one more question before we wrap up part 2 here.
Yeah.
We keep hearing this phrase, data is the new oil.
Yes.
So how can our listeners, how can they become the data refinery? How can they extract the most value from this precious resource?
I love that analogy. It goes beyond, just acquiring specific skills or keeping up with the latest trends, right? I think it's really about developing a data mindset.
A data mindset. Tell me more about that. What does that mean?
It's about, seeing data not just as numbers and facts,
right,
but as a source of insights, as a source of opportunities.
Yeah.
It's the real competitive advantage, right?
Right.
It's about being curious. It's about asking the right questions. It's about always, trying to figure out, how do I extract value from this?
So it's about being a data detective almost.
Yeah.
Like hunting for those clues.
Data detective, I love that.
That unlock those insights and that hidden potential.
Absolutely. It's about being data literate.
Yeah.
Understanding its limitations, understanding the ethical considerations, around data, and being a champion for data-driven decision-making within your organization.
I love that. That data mindset sounds so crucial, not just for data professionals, but for anyone who wants to be successful, really, in this world today. It's like we're all becoming data citizens, aren't we?
We are.
Yeah.
We are. And, the more comfortable we are with data, the better we will be able to navigate this world and actually use it for good.
Use it for good, yeah. Well, that's a powerful thought. But before we get too philosophical here, we have one more really important piece of data strategy that we need to talk about. Data governance.
Yeah.
As the volume of data grows and as it gets more complex, and especially with AI in the mix now, effective data governance is crucial, right? It's that foundation for ensuring data quality, privacy, security, and that it's being used ethically.
You are absolutely right. Data governance is one of those things that often gets overlooked, but it is the foundation of any successful data strategy.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, when they hear data governance, they kind of tune out.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound super exciting.
It doesn't, no.
So how do we make it exciting for our listeners? How do we make it relevant?
I think a good way to think about data governance is think of it like the guardrails on a highway, right?
Okay.
They're not necessarily the most exciting part of your drive,
Right.
but they're there to keep you safe and prevent you from, going off the road. And in the data world, those guardrails are essential for preventing costly mistakes, protecting sensitive information, making sure you're using data responsibly.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So what are those key ingredients then? What makes a solid data governance framework? Where do you even start?
You start with having very clear policies and procedures.
Okay.
Outlining how data is collected, how it's stored, processed, and shared, and very clearly defined roles and responsibilities.
Right.
So that everyone knows who's responsible for what when it comes to managing data.
So it's like a data constitution almost.
Yes. A set of rules that everyone agrees to.
A rule book.
Absolutely. And it's not just about setting the rules, it's about enforcing them. So you have to have controls, you have to have monitoring mechanisms in place to make sure data is being handled correctly,
Hmm.
and that any, breaches, any violations, they're caught quickly and they're addressed.
That makes sense. But with AI being so central to data strategy now,
Hmm.
it gets more complicated, doesn't it?
It does.
You have to start thinking about things like algorithmic bias, explainability,
Yes.
the ethics of decisions that are being made by these AI systems.
Yeah, it adds a whole new layer of complexity, right, to this data governance question. We need to make sure these systems are being used fairly, transparently, and that they align with our values.
So we need AI guardrails too.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
You develop very specific guidelines for AI development and deployment.
Okay.
You implement ways to detect and mitigate bias in algorithms. And you make sure that any decision that's made by an AI can be explained.
Right.
A human can understand it.
So data governance, it sounds like it's getting a lot tougher,
It is.
especially in this age of AI. Massive data sets. Can we even stay ahead of the curve?
It's challenging, but I think it's more important now than ever, right? It's not just about checking a box for compliance anymore.
Right.
It's a strategic imperative for any organization that wants to use data, to its full potential, responsibly and ethically.
And as we were talking about earlier, who controls that data is a big question mark.
Yeah.
It's this interesting, dance between IT, business units, data professionals. It's almost like a game of data chess,
It is. It is.
where everybody's trying to figure out how to make the right moves.
And like any game of strategy,
Yeah.
it's not just about making the right moves, it's about seeing the bigger picture, anticipating what your opponent is going to do,
Right.
and adapting your strategy as the game unfolds.
That's a great point. So as we wrap up this deep dive into data strategy, what's the one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
That this AI revolution, it's really reshaping data strategy. It's not just about the shiny new technologies. It's really a fundamental shift in how we think about data, how we manage data, how we use it to create value and gain a competitive advantage.
Yeah, and navigating this new world, it requires a mix of, technical skills, strategic thinking, but also just a willingness to keep learning, keep adapting.
Yeah.
This isn't a one-time thing.
It's a journey.
It's a journey.
It's an ongoing journey. Those who can embrace this, this challenge, this new way of thinking, they will be the ones that thrive.
I love that. Well, that's a wrap for today's deep dive. We covered a lot, from the AI revolution in data strategy to the importance of data governance. We hope you found this insightful, that you feel inspired, and remember, in this data-driven world, the power is really in your hands. Use it wisely.